So this week is Parashat Balak, and we have a very, very large amount of questions and large amount of material to work with in this week's Parsha. So we have to ask ourselves, with your permission, the whole concept of what is going on in this week's Parsha. There's so much happening, so many things in the commentary, so many different aspects happening, and on the most basic level, we would say, why is it that the name of someone that's seemingly so evil, Balak, given to a Parsha in the Torah, right? It's a very basic question. And we have to understand that the whole concept of Balak, if you rearrange the letters, Bet, Lamed, Kuf, you get the letters Kuf, Bet, Lamed. Kibel, receiving. The whole concept of Balak was unrestrained receiving. Through speaking, through looking, through everything. The letter Bet represents continuity, bracha. The letter Lamed represents taking the light from up above and feeding it below the line. It's the only letter that has a part that goes above the line and also below the line. When you look at how the letters are written, there's a part above and there's a part below. And the central part, where most of the letters of the Aleph Bet are in the middle. And then the Kuf represents like a double agent. It's feeding down below the line. If you read Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg's wonderful book about the letters of creation, there's a book about letters, and each letter has a special chapter. It's wonderfully explained. I highly recommend it. And that will give you an insight into understanding what this concept of Balak is really about. Because we have to ask ourselves, what's going on? It's feeding the continuity of light that's coming through the letter Lamed from up above, down below, into the negativity. That's what Balak represents. That's what Balak represents, and that's also connected to Bilam. Rashi comments on Bamidbar 22:5. He says that Balak brought back the aspect of impurity, which was people having relations with animals, that caused the flood of Noah. Okay? He brought it back. He made it popular again. Why? Because he needed it for his witchcraft. Now you have to understand the concept that this was the ultimate form of pure ego, pure control. And the Gemara in Chulin 89a explains that the whole concept of Bnei Israel and the prophets of Bnei Israel is the concept of Avraham Avinu saying, as we said last week, Anachnu afar ve'efer, ani afar ve'efer, I am dust and ashes. And then with Moshe and Aaron that say, Nachnu ma, what are we, right? And then again with David HaMelech that says, I am a man, I'm not a man, I'm a worm and not a man. What is this constant repetition of the prophets of Bnei Israel that saying we're nothing, we're nothing? So you have room to receive and to be open. And that is a contradistinction to those that try to come and to destroy, let's say, Yerushalayim, or to harm Bnei Israel. Whether you're talking about Nimrod, whether you're talking, who says, let's build a city and a tower. So the Zohar in Parshat Noach explains that the city and the tower represents that they were trying to take energy and steal energy. It's a great tower, a great structure to bring down energy. And this energy was spiritual current to destroy. To say that Hashem, you're nothing, we don't need you. You could stay where you are, Hashem, we totally don't need you. We can build here for ourselves everything we want. That's why they're all united with one language. But Hashem says, you're united? Well, change your language and see how long you stay united. The same thing happened again with Paro. Paro says to Yosef, he says, who is Hashem? Who is Hashem? Because Paro was totally connected to the concept of Elokim, the natural world, and all the concepts of judgment and impurity and all the nature of witchcraft. As we know, in every house in Mitzrayim there was an altar to some type of Avodah Zarah, to some type of idol worship. And then when you go further, you see with Sancherev, he says, can Hashem, the God of Yerushalayim, save the city from me? Because all the other gods of all the other cities that Sancherev invaded, all of them were unable to protect their city. right? So each of these people, even though they were being used, as it were, by Hashem, as an agent in a large orchestra, as it were, to fulfill a specific role, still they had gahava, ego, like, I'm doing what I'm doing and I'm doing the right thing. That's the opposite of what the prophets of Bnei Israel were doing. And this continues even further with Nebuchadnezzar. He says, I shall ascend to the pedestal of the clouds. He's a very high and mighty leader. And continues with Hiram of Tzur. He says that I will go and I sat on the throne in the heart of the world. And this continues and continues over and over. You see, the prophets of Bnei Israel are low, they're open, and they check themselves. Every moment they're checking themselves. There's a question, Moshe and Aaron, ve'iplu al pneichem, they fall on their faces. Shalom. They're always falling on their faces, they're always checking themselves to see where are they. They don't sit on their previous accomplishments. Whatever they did is meaningless. They're always moving forward for that moment. But all the kings of the invaders that were ever attacking Bnei Israel, they're always saying, look, I was successful here, I was successful here. Of course I'll be successful destroying Yerushalayim. Of course I'll be successful attacking. It's over and over. It keeps happening. And they don't stop with that concept. So we learn that really the concept we have to find is, how can we be more open to really see? And that's this week's Parsha in one very key concept. Real seeing. Not how can I take, but how can I share. Not how can I enjoy more for myself, but rather how can I create a circuit of blessings around me, that everyone is having what they need. As we know, Moshe Rabbeinu would be somewhere. What was he doing? He was looking to feed and serve everyone. Why did he pass it on to Yeshua? Because Yeshua was the one that was the most busy. He didn't leave the oil, he didn't leave the tent. He was always doing what was required for everyone. He was busy doing that, so he always had that connection. So that concept is very, very, very key. The Parashat Balak, we have to ask the very simple question. Why was Balak called Ben Tzipor? The son of a bird. The Zohar explains that he created for himself, with witchcraft, he created for himself a little spy that would do and tell him whatever he asked. That's it. He would say, I need to know this and this, and immediately the bird would come with an answer. And the understanding is that then, well, why did he need Bilam? Right? I mean, he's so capable, he has everything, why does he need Bilam? So it says that in all the nations of the world, in all the spiritual nations, there was never anyone as high as Moshe Rabbeinu in prophecy, except Bilam. Now the understanding we have to take here is that Balak also saw this. And it says the moment that he could see Bilam's stature paralleling Moshe Rabbeinu, he immediately sent messengers to Bilam to say, hey, come join my team, I need you here. And the understanding is that every time that there is something about to take place on a spiritual level, there's always also a parallel here in this physical world. It says in this week's Parsha in the Zohar that Hashem wanted to give the Torah to Bnei Israel. And he went to all of the different places. He went to the Malach that was the chieftain of Esav. And he said, will you receive the Torah? He says, what's in it? The Kadosh Baruch Hu says, do not kill. He says, I can't receive that Torah because the whole kingdom of Esav is built on invading and killing. He goes again to Rachav, the Malach responsible for the chieftain of Ishmael, and he says the same exact question: will you receive the Torah? The Malach says, what's in it? Kadosh Baruch Hu skips to the part that says, do not commit adultery. He says, we cannot, because the whole kingdom, the whole life force of that Malach was the life force of water, and the concept of pru revu, be fruitful and multiply, was being brought down as Pere Adam, a wild man, meaning unrestrained growth that just keeps multiplying and multiplying. He says, no, I can't accept that. That Torah is not for us. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see that from Avram, you get Ishmael. From Yitzhak, you get Esav. So Hashem was like, as it were, cleaning out the negative elements from those two aspects, so that there could be no accusation on Bnei Israel anywhere in any way or form. And the most basic understanding then is that still had to be mirrored and paralleled here. That Bnei Israel had to have a bracha come from the lowest place. Because that's what it is basically. Balak and Bilam represent, if you take their name, you get the word Amalek from the ends of their name. And that's a famous thing that many people have heard. But you have to take it a little deeper. What did Balak and Bilam specialize in? Seeing negative and speaking negative. Where do we see that in the Torah? In Gan Eden. In Gan Eden, the Nachash sees negative and looks how to take by seeing, and then also looks how to take by speaking negative. So that's always a mirror. It's always a mirror that keeps happening. It's an event that never stops from that aspect until we get involved and say, no, I don't want it. The next question we have to ask is, how are this all related to our day-to-day work today? We hear something, or we say, oh, let me know that interesting little piece of information. Or we see something and it draws our attention. We can look at something and it's just something that we notice and we say, I took note of it. Or we can feed off of it. For example, we know that somebody was telling me the most popular category of things that people post on their social media accounts or even just their private web pages is photos of food. Why? Why do you want to see the food? You want to smell the food. You're walking down the street. You want to taste the food. You want to see it. In the times of Adam Rishon, seeing was eating. Balak on some level understood this concept, and same thing goes for Bilam, and they were looking how to and trying to figure out how to use that as a weapon to harm Bnei Israel. But Hashem was using them, much to their chagrin, to be, as it were, channels to actually bless Israel. As we know, Moshe grew up in one of the darkest places in Mitzrayim, and he was the light in the darkness. And as we go farther in the Parsha, we will see that it was the blessings that Bilam is pronouncing that is the light also that's coming out of the darkest place. He's one of the lowest lowlifes in history, and he's pronouncing one of the most profound series of prophecies, right? About Mashiach, about the future, Kam Shevet Yisrael, all this concept of Mashiach and all this concept is coming there. Why? Because he was representing all of the negativity, Dat El Elyon, as it says in the Parsha. Knowledge of the highest of all gods. What is it talking about? It's talking about the Kel Acher, the other God, meaning the lowest crowns of Tumah, the lowest crowns of impurity. That was what he had knowledge of. And when people heard him speak, he was a very smooth speaker, they thought he was talking about the most sublime concepts, the most wonderful things. They had no concept that he was talking about the klippah and all the impurity. He had no concept of that. He was very gifted in his speech, but he used it to ensnare people, to gain power, to gain control. And it wasn't for the sake of doing some kind of positivity, it was only for cursing. But as we said a few moments before, as soon as Balak saw through his means that Bilam was paralleling Moshe Rabbeinu, immediately he sent for him. Why? Because the focus of the Nachash through history, the serpent through history, is always take out the leaders of Bnei Israel. Because if you take out the leaders, the people don't know what to do. As the famous story that we mentioned a few weeks ago, that Bnei Israel are challenged. Moshe is still up. They don't see him, and Satan, as it were, shows them a vision of Moshe having died, and he's dead, and that's it. That's a vision that's shown to Bnei Israel. It's not true. It didn't really happen. It's a false vision. And it's the same thing that keeps happening throughout history. Whenever there's a big challenge where a tremendous amount of blessing could be revealed, there's always a challenge that people are shown a vision of futility, of, oh, there's no point to it, just give up, just accept. There's even a teaching that a neshama, after it leaves the world, it's basically tested by Satan to basically see, okay, there's nothing left. There's nothing more after this. Just give up. There's nothing more. You left the world, and that's it. There's no future. And the Neshama has the choice to say, I believe in it, or I don't believe in it. And the Neshama says, no, I don't believe in this. There is something. There's something more. So it gets to that something more. And if not. So there's an understanding for us that every time that we have to see something good, every time that we have to activate to go to the next level in our spiritual growth, to go to the next level where we need to be, there comes a test that says it's impossible to move any farther. This is it. This is it. And in this week's Parsha, if we can learn one thing from Balak and Bilam on the good side, is that they were very determined. They didn't quit, right? They kept going once and again and again and again. It's like you see those people that are surveyors. Sometimes you'll see them in some of the cities where they'll stand in a center spot and they have these little tripods and a little something, and they're looking out, measuring lines and making sure that everything on the blueprint is laid out properly as they build new structures. So they were doing the same thing, but from a negative aspect. They were looking, okay, we can't see it here. Let's go up the mountain and let's see from there. Let's look down and let's see what we can do to curse. Oh, it's not good here. Let's try a different place. And they were very determined. So if nothing else, we can learn to be as determined as they are, but for the opposite perspective. They were determined to infiltrate, to invade, to curse, to destroy, to see what's negative. We could be determined, as the famous story goes of Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berdichov, we could be determined to see the goodness in every situation, the goodness in every person. Once he was shown somebody that was on a fast day, on a holiday, and he's eating something that's not kosher, and he says, well, Baruch Hashem, you see Hashem? This person is honest. You created honest people, Hashem. They're honest. He sees the good in everything. And that's one of the things that is told by many tzaddikim. When they would see people, they didn't see all the temporariness. Meaning, the sins are temporary. The eternal is the neshama. They saw the malot of the person. They saw the diamond inside. As the Lubavitcher Rebbe often commented, he's counting diamonds. He doesn't get tired standing in line for hours and hours. Right? It's the same thing with every one of us. We have to learn how to see on some level that every person and every scenario is just for our benefit. Called the Rahmana David Letav David. All that the merciful one does, he does for the good. Or as Nachumish Gamzu says, Akol Letova, Gamzu Letova. It's all, also this is for the good. To see it that way is difficult. Rabbi Akiva, when he sees the Beit HaMikdash destroyed and he sees a fox running through, he starts to laugh, and all the sages are looking and say, "You're crazy. What are you doing? Why are you laughing?" He says, because if all this was prophesied and the fox running through is prophesied, then the rebuilding that's prophesied also will happen. And to see the ultimate good is a small aspect of Ruach HaKodesh that is our birthright, each and every one of us. That's our birthright, to see the ultimate good. So we can't say, oh, these great giants in history, they saw it. Me, I don't see. I'm in a difficult moment. The car, standing in line, somebody cut me off. This happened, the thing I left on the ground, somebody took it away. It's all for the good. To see it that way. It's a very big challenge. But if we activate slowly, we train ourselves step by step, this is for the good. And we see it, it's not wishful thinking. By doing it over and over, we start to see a little bit more than our limited perspective. And we're able to understand there's more to what is going on in my life than what I'm seeing this minute, and say, Hashem, let me open up, let me see more. Let me see more, let me understand better. It's a very important concept, because all the time that we are in the middle of a scenario, we're taking a test. And to stop, to relax, and to imagine if we're playing some type of musical instrument in the middle of a recital, and to stop, to check our postures, to sit properly, and to check our breathing, and do everything all over again. It's very hard to stop and say, wait, what am I doing? Where are my thoughts? How am I processing to the next phase? You don't think that. That's very important. Because that's really the concept of how we get to the next level. And we see that Balak and Bilam were extremely stubborn in their refusal to believe that anything other than their perspective could be right. Right? They said, the mule, the she-mule that was talking, first saw the angel of Hashem, which Bilam couldn't see. It's not that he refused to see. He couldn't see. Why? Because he was so stuck, argumentative. Oh, it's only this way, it's only that way. I saw today as an example, two people, as I was thinking about certain elements of the Parsha and studying, I saw two people get into a big argument. One said, you can't be in this room. Another said, you can't be in the room. And they're arguing all these laws and halachas. And I thought to myself, this too is Hashem sending a message. We have to be aware that we can't be busy, even though this happened after a tefillah, but we can't be busy trying to be right. Rather, we should be busy trying to reveal blessings. Each one was busy saying, you're right, you're wrong, the halacha says this. He says, no, you don't know Mishnah Berurah, you have to look here. This is the halacha. Each one was trying to prove their point. And it was loud. It wasn't like just a talk. It was from across the room with loud voices and screaming and yelling. And I thought to myself, and I said, if the person that they attribute their loyalty to, their leader, their Rebbe, would be in the room instead of, let's say, in another city in Israel right now, would they act differently? That's my only thought came into my mind. Would they act differently? If they would act the same, kol hakavod, continue as you are. But if they would act differently, then maybe on some level they realize that it's not appropriate. Not about them, and it's not about the other people in the room. Let's say the room was empty. Is it still appropriate? It's not. Why? Because the place that they're in, the room, has its own specific level of holiness, a kiddushah. A place where people pray is a very high level of kiddushah. A place where there's a Beit Midrash, where people are learning and searching for Hashem, Torah, that's even a higher level. It's an even higher level than a Beit Knesset where people gather to pray. And in that place, you're not to have arguments. You can argue a halacha to say, I see it this way, I see it that way, people talk. But when people are screaming across the room, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit, doesn't belong. So that's another aspect of how we have to ask ourselves and say, if we could see Hashem this moment, because it says, Bilam Balak, they were stumayin, they had the eyes closed, blocked, unable to have any light penetrate because they were so busy looking how to take, that the whole concept of sharing, of seeing the real reality, of having an ayin tovah was foreign to them. So they couldn't see a malach of Hashem. It doesn't say malach Elokim, the concept of Gevurah, it says malach Hashem. They couldn't see it, they couldn't connect to it. Why? Because that whole concept is above nature. Now it says there's certain categories of miracles, like the shamir worm, the worm that was used for cutting the stone of the Beit HaMikdash, that were created at a time of twilight. There was neither day or night. And Hashem organized it, He orchestrated it, that this mouth of the mule, the donkey, the she-mule of Bilam would also be in that same category. That it would speak. But before we even start talking about the donkey that's speaking, let's ask the question, how could it see? It doesn't say Hashem made the donkey's eyes open that it could see the malach of Hashem. It just saw. As we know, all animals can see what's going on around them. They see children, they're relaxed. They see people that are very angry, they'll start, if it's barking or making noise or moving away. Horses can't be around, for example, people that are very, very angry. They'll immediately start moving away, or they'll give them a kick or something. They can't. That's just the nature of the animal, because they see the real reality. But with Balak, with Bilam in the very next verse, what does it say? And Hashem opened the eyes of Bilam to see the malach of Hashem. What does that mean? It means that the animal, which has no free choice, an animal is consistent, going in one direction, has the ability to see a malach with a flaming sword, and the person that's riding the animal cannot. Right? It's a very powerful statement. It means that sometimes people, with their stubbornness, with their insensitivity, could lower themselves to the point where they're not willing to accept another viewpoint. They're not willing to listen or to see another level of reality. It's very, very difficult. You continue further. It says that Bnei Israel are blessed, ki baruchu, and he couldn't look at them. And what does it mean that Bnei Israel are blessed? Blessed means continuity. It means something that's continuing and going and constantly moving forward. Now, how is it that there's no continuity in Bilam's progress? He's beating his mule, his she-mule, and he keeps completely not paying attention until she pins him to the wall that his leg is crushed. What does that mean? 3 times he beat the mule, the she-mule, and finally it opens it up and says, "What are you hitting me? What are you doing? Can't you see the Malach of Hashem? Can't you see what's going on around you?" He was disconnected from people. He was very isolated, so the only one he had to talk to was his she-mule. But he couldn't see the real reality. So that's an understanding to us that Hashem says, you're going to beat, I'm going to give you 3 times he beat it, 3 times Hashem made him say brachas to Bnei Israel. It's like the ultimate comedy show here. If you're paying attention and reading, let's say just the Midrash, not reading a ton of books. One book, the little Midrash says that we read to children. You read that, or you read, it's like a comedy show. How can a person be so lost, so completely out of it? But the Zohar says that in everything that there is light, it has to permeate at all levels. So Balak and Bilam represent the eyes and the tongue that speak, the mouth that speaks of darkness. So Hashem had to bring the highest bracha, the vision of Mashiach, through them. Because that's the entire aspect that all of reality has to be permeated with, and knowledge of Hashem, knowledge of the ultimate purpose of the goodness of the world, which is Mashiach, and bringing about that everyone has a purpose and a role to fulfill. And that is what it is all about. As it continues, we have to ask the question, why does it say, Mi mana afar Yaakov? Who can count and enumerate the dust of Yaakov? Why specifically this word, afar, dust? It's a very powerful word. It means something. We know that the curse that the serpent, the Nachash, received was that it would travel on its belly and eat dust. Dust is everywhere, it's always available. There's never a need to pray for food if there's dust available. It's always easy to have. When a person doesn't appreciate what they have no way to enjoy anything. If you take a person that was simple, very simple example, if anybody here has not been swimming in their life, raise your hand. Anyone? So everyone's been swimming at one point. If you hold your breath as a child, and you say, well, let me see, how long can I hold my breath underneath the water? At some point you get out of the water. Oh, I held it for half a minute, 5 minutes, whatever it was. You appreciate breathing. Most of the time in our life, we don't appreciate breathing. It's just another thing we're doing. We don't think about it. It just happens. I have to go here, I'm reading my planner, I'm going through my phone, and so on and so forth. Life goes on. We don't appreciate that breathing is a gift. That the electricity that kickstarts our heart is a gift. What's the most valuable thing you have? And people say, oh, my children, my this, my that. I said, nonsense, the air inside your lungs. That's the most valuable thing you have on the physical level. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't be here. Period. Why does Hashem design the world that you have to breathe in and breathe out? Ask yourself that question. It's a very serious question. There's an aspect of us that we're receiving. There's an aspect of us that we're contributing to our environment, breathing out. Trees breathe out. They create, as it were, a balance with us. We're all interacting one with the other. And that's the understanding that we need to have, that Balak did not yet connect with, and Bilam did not yet connect with, which is the aspect of interacting positively with the environment. So if we could say, how do I see good in the world around me? And how do I bring good to the world around me? The same is true that how do I see good and how do I bring good? The same is the opposite of what Balak was doing. They were looking, how can we see negative? How can we cause lack? So people frequently ask me, how do I avoid Ayin Hara? Simple question really, how do I avoid Ayin Hara? I want to know how to not have any negative on me. And I always say very simple answer. Avoid Amalek. But Amalek isn't the people out there. It's the sparks inside of each and every one of us that say, "Ooh, this is bad. Ooh, this scenario is bad. Ooh, this person is no good." That's Amalek. And that's the end of the words Balak and Bilam. That's their name. In the end of their name is that word Amalek. Now, on a physical level, lehavdil, we know that when certain types of snakes reproduce, the hybrid species that are born from those snakes are very difficult for scientists to figure out how to protect against their venom. Why? Because they have a very different type of mixture in them. Every snake basically has its own anti-venom inside of its venom, and that's how people develop the remedies by using the actual venom itself. The same thing happens inside spiritually. If we look, what is the venom of the Nachash inside of Adam HaRishon and it's inside of all of humanity afterwards? The concept of how can I take? How can I see what's lacking and inject some more of that venom of this is missing, this could be perfect. Oh, this thing that I just bought, it was good, but there's buyer's remorse. You buy something, oh, that wasn't, I didn't get what I wanted. I expected this. Why is there a difference? Because we're looking for lack. It's true, we should build and get what we want and ask for what we want. But sometimes we see lack instead of seeing the positive. That's an aspect of Ayin Hara that we project out into the world. And we can't only think that Ayin Hara is coming because somebody else looked. There's also an aspect of I can look in the mirror or say, oh yeah, I look good, okay, it's good. No. To say that you look for a second, you spend a second, I look appropriate is a second. That's called a status check. To continue to stare, that's Ayin Hara. And a person can give that to themselves, to their children, to whoever, without even meaning it. It doesn't have to be intentional. So how does that happen? By having a mindset of, how can I take? How can I take? You look at a baby walks into a room, baby's energy is like this. Running, they're smiling, they're cute, they're running, they're getting their hands out. What are they giving? They're giving. They just want to, right? Somebody in the family or a friend sees them and says, oh, it's so cute, I want to take. That's cute, that's nice, it's understood. Frequently, grandparents love grandchildren coming and running and going because the kids are pure energy, and people that study energetic medicine know this. The kids are pure energy, and everyone that's, let's say, older than 21, which is basically all of us here in this room, everyone that's older than 21, already the body is starting to go on some energetic level. It's not growing anymore. Okay? So they can use, on some level, that energy that baby is giving out for free. Right? They can use that. So everybody comes and says, let me hug you, let me hold you. What is it, hugging and holding? Sharing, free energy. Let's take. So everybody that comes and takes is receiving some level of free energy. Now, if we're doing it in the loving way and we're the parent and we love and we want to nurture and protect the child, we say, well, how do I avoid Ayin Hara for my child? How do I make it so that the child is protected? And the answer, again and again and again, is the child is protected up to a certain point, really by us sheltering the child, but at some point the child has to be out in the open world. And how do we protect then? So at that point, we have to teach the child how to activate the button inside which says, I am God. And every child that can recognize the difference between good and bad can activate that button that says, I am part of Bnei Israel. As we say, there's Ein Mazal Yisrael. The word Ein is also the letters for the word I, Ayin, like the I that's inside the Chamsa, as we talked about a few weeks ago. That's the whole concept of rising above any limit or any level of limitation. That's the concept that we have of connecting above and beyond any of these levels. So when we say, I want this child to be protected, I want myself, my family to be protected, I have to act a certain way. Because all the amulets and chamsas and skulot and kameot, they're wonderful. But there's a price to using them. And I'm not talking about the cash money price, I'm talking about a spiritual price. As we mentioned last week in Parashat Chukat, the Ari stated specifically that all of the things that are known with the holy names for perfectly righteous tzaddikim they are to use, and yet still there's a price spiritually to the soul of the person that uses the holy names. The dust or the ashes of the red cow, the panaduma, would purify and would be used. So that would be allowed. But since we no longer have the ashes of the red cow, we cannot make use of the holy names unless it's to save a life or something and so on and so forth, of really major instances. Then people would make that sacrifice. And we have stories about tzaddikim that would do it. But we, in our time, in our generation, we would say, well, that's all beyond me, it doesn't mean anything. But one thing that's not beyond me is to act with that aspect of Yisrael, to act with that aspect of how do I rise above? Shir lakel. Because Balak and Bilam were constantly looking from one place to the other place. This doesn't work, let's try another strategy, trying to blind Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't focus on the rest of Bnei Israel. Let's go for the leader. Let's go for the head. And that's the strategy of the Nachash repeatedly. Blind the eyes of the generation. The eyes of the generation, as we know, are the sages. Moshe Rabbeinu was the eyes of the generation. And they saw, with their level of prophecy that they had available to them, they saw the whole scene where one of the leaders would stand up, and everybody, a huge crowd would stand up. It was Shevet Shimon, which represents the concept of hearing. That the leader, the prince, stood up, and a large group, in respect to him, rose in respect to him. That's what they saw. They thought it was Moshe Rabbeinu. So they sent out a whole strategy that they had, that they were going to send out one of their princesses of Midian to go and seduce Moshe Rabbeinu. Didn't work. Why? Because they got the wrong person. And that's always going back to the saying, says Hashem will make it so that nobody knows who's going to be Melech HaMashiach. Nobody knows what's going to be. It's going to be something that's a surprise and a shock to people. Why? So that the Satan cannot have the address, it cannot have the homing beacon where to attack, to cause accusations, to cause problems. So that's the whole answer, that we have to understand that the light is always, it's flowing to us. The things that we need are coming to us, but we have to be aware of how to look at the situation positively and understand what is happening. Why did Balak focus on seducing Moshe and this whole concept? Was because they wanted to take away sight. Balak represented sight, Moshe represented dat, the concept of the third eye, the concept of the inner knowing, the spiritual sight of seeing with the eyes closed even. And he said, I want to take that away from Bnei Israel, because when they don't have that, they can't receive and hold on to the Torah. The same way that Hashem, as we said earlier in the Zohar, is bringing about this concept, goes to all of the chieftains of Esav, of Ishmael, and says, do you want to receive the Torah? And immediately says the one thing that chieftain will not agree to. Not killing, not adultery, whatever it is, that one thing they say. Why? Because it doesn't fit. And Bnei Israel are yashar lakel, straight to God. The concept of receiving and reverberating with chesed. For this world is built on chesed. The concept of gvura already existed and the world was destroyed. But this world is built on chesed. And that aspect is what we are to bring. The Torah is a Torah of chesed. It's a balance, but it's also of chesed. And that's what we have to bring out. Balak and Bilam, 3 times they tried to curse. 3 times Hashem said, it's not working out. One after another bracha came out. And that is the aspect that had to be revealed. And that is the aspect of bringing a circuit of blessing from the lowest place. That was what Hashem was doing. And yet what happens afterwards? They have the whole incident of Baal Peor, where they were having an idol worship. And the idol worship would work like this. The people would literally go to the bathroom on the idol, and that was called the worship, the offering, the sacrifice to the idol. Because it looked as if they were disgracing or making fun of the idol. Actually, it was a worship to it, because that was what they were focusing on. That progressed to the next level, where then they started to say, okay, that's not enough. Let's go and attack Bnei Israel and attack them dafka in the one thing that they have to bring to the world, which is what? Tzniut. Where they made an open, out in the open, in front of everyone, in the middle of everything, an attack and they thought was Moshe Rabbeinu, it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu. It was actually one of the princes of Shevet Shimon. And the next thing that we see immediately is the whole concept of Pinchas standing up, which is the end of this week's parsha, that Pinchas stands up, and what does he say? Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't remember the halacha of what to do with these people. We know the halacha is to wipe them out. And because of his action of acting with alacrity, with zrizut, immediately he receives the Briti Shalom. That's the end of this week's parsha, the beginning of next week's parsha. We have to ask ourselves a very simple question here. Why is it that he receives the Briti Shalom, the eternal priesthood that Pinchas received? And essentially, it's the vision of Pinchas. If you look in the words in this week's parsha, it says Vayira Pinchas. How does the parsha open up? Vayira Balak. It's contradicting the two. Pinchas received the eternal aspect of the eyes, the Birkat Kohanim, of the eye in the center of the hands. That's why the Kohanim are putting their hands out, and they're always covering their hands. The eternal aspect of the eyes he received, because he saw goodness and he was willing to die for it. As we read in the Midrash in next week's parsha, Pinchas, from fright, died after he did what he did, because he saw the whole Shevet Shimon coming to wipe him out. He's like, uh-oh. He died of fright right there on the spot. And that'll be talked more detail about in the future, what really is going on there. But the concept is that is exactly paralleling Balak, what he was looking how to destroy and how to curse, and Bilam, what they were looking was just how to find the lack. Pinchas is looking how to destroy the lack. The Magefa, the plague that we read about in this week's parsha, it hit us a very specific number, 24,000. Now we know that in Torah, everything that happens in the thousands is a supernal number. It's a number of a supernal level in Shamayim, some high level, spiritually. And 24 represents the 24 books of the Torah, the 24 aspects of Beit Din that there is in Shamayim. That is the aspect of 24. So when we say that there's 24,000 that died, it's saying that the aspect of balance was lost. But Pinchas saved it and stopped it there, because he was willing to go out of himself, to sacrifice himself. And that's a lesson for all of us. To really go beyond Ayin Hara, to really go towards judging everything, not just to chav zchut, but really to see the good in something and focusing on it. Ayin Hara, what is Ayin Hara? It's a science. It's not some superstition. It's real. What is it? Looking at something and saying, this is a lack. By saying a lack, we suck out the life force of it. What's the science of the opposite of that? Looking at something and saying, this is the good. And by focusing on the good, as the Lubavitch Rebbe taught, you focus on the good, you bring out the good in the person. By focusing on the good, we can bring out the real light and the real blessing in every scenario, in every person, in every situation. Rabbi Anava was saying just recently when he was traveling to London, he had a very, very difficult situation where the tires of the car went out and there was a whole big, big, big mess. And he was very calm, and he was very easygoing about everything. He didn't lose his cool. Why? Because he saw the situation as being good. Because he was willing to do that, it worked out. He managed to make it where he had to go. Everything worked out. And that's the challenge to us, to see the situations that seem impossible. When you're waiting for the plane, when you're stuck in traffic, when you're whatever it might be, serious situation, to see it as good and elevate that nikudat tov, that aspect of good that's in the scenario, in the situation, in the person, activate it. And then there could be an aspect of bracha. Ki baruch hu, as it says, that Bilam was looking at Bnei Israel, and he says, I can only bless them. Ki baruch hu. His staring had no effect because they are blessed. Blessing means continuity, continuing to see the good in the person, in the scenario, in the difficult, impossible situation, and say, this has to be good. It's painful, it's difficult, it has to be good. How do I elevate it? And that's why we talk to Chamim, that's why we talk to sages and rabbis. We ask, how do I see the good in it? And to get it out of there. And that's the opposite of Balak. Instead of kibel, 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 receive, 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 to think how to give. to share. That's the aspect that we all of us have to bring to ourselves, to our families, our friends, our children, to everyone around us. That they should understand how to do more giving, and then the whole aspect of any kind of judgment or any kind of disharmony goes away. And then we can have real bracha. B'ezrat Hashem, we will see the revelation of these blessings of Balak and Bilam that they are giving. We should see these blessings of Mashiach Berachamim.